The vulnerability trap, okay? We're going to talk about vulnerability and how toxic women, particularly BPD or borderline personality disorder women, will use your vulnerabilities against you. I'm Paul, Apex Mindset. Slide your finger over, hit the subscribe button. If you know anybody who has been doing the toxic relationship thing, go ahead and send them this video if it applies to them. I appreciate the support. So we'll get right into it. I talked a lot, did a pretty sizable video a couple days ago on vulnerability, okay? And male vulnerability, how it's not an attractive or arousing quality. I broke down why that is. Other things are like authenticity and resiliency, but in being resilient, but not vulnerability, okay? So watch that video. All right, for more of a background as to why, if you think vulnerability is an attractive quality for a male to have, then you're mistaken and you need to watch that video, okay? But what we're going to talk about today, though, is how women who are toxic and who have abandonment issues will use your vulnerabilities against you, okay? And this is a very typical borderline personality disorder technique. So what they want, what a BPD woman, I'll just say BPD, but she might not be BPD. She could just be toxic, have abandonment issues, have, baggage. So it could be that she has abandonment things going on that could be worked out in therapy, or she could be on the extreme side of BPD where she's just not likely going to be fixable, all right? So wherever she lies on that spectrum, but here's the technique. It's to try to get you to be vulnerable, all right? To convince you that by you being vulnerable, which means when I say vulnerable, understand what I mean by that is being emotionally weak. That you can, take your armor off, so to speak, be emotionally weak in front of them, cry to them, be and show your weaknesses without solving your own weaknesses, okay? You can give your weaknesses to them and they're going to be your source of comfort, all right? That's a dangerous proposition anyway. To a healthy woman, that's not going to be an attractive thing to have to handle or do, especially all the time. But when a woman has abandonment issues, and abandonment is a key component to borderline personality disorder, she wants to get you to show these vulnerabilities and to rely on her for emotional comfort. That gives her security that you're not going to go anywhere. And then she gets to tell herself that and tell you, of course, that she's the only one for you. So then she propagates that one-itis myth, that she's the one for you because she can take your vulnerabilities, she can handle your emotions and handle your darkness and handle, they use all kinds of colorful language to make it sound really cool, to handle your demons. So she's going to handle your demons like no other woman could, right? Any of this sound familiar to some of you guys who have been with toxic women? All right, so she's going to handle your demons, handle your darkness, and, and these other women couldn't do that, right? And so she's trying to propagate this idea that she's the one, she's the one that nobody else could be, okay? And if you aren't aware of what's going on, and especially if you've bought into the predominant social conditioning of having having your one-itis and meeting that only one for you type of a thing and all that bullshit. When you meet a toxic woman like this, then she plays right into your mythologies. And so I went through in my video a couple days ago on vulnerabilities why it's attractive for guys to buy into this vulnerability myth. And so for you listening, you're going to buy into this myth and think, yes, this woman is this perfect woman for me. I can let my guard down. I can be emotionally weak in front of her and not handle my own stuff, and she can be my source of comfort. And she's this wonderful, great woman who can handle me where nobody else could. You see the myth, you see how that sounds very much like a one-itis situation? And so you believe in that, and she instills that in you, and she will ask questions. She'll even want to force out of you uncomfortable things, you know, like talking about, you know, a death of a friend or a death in the family or a traumatic experience you went through. She'll get you to want to share those things. And if you're in a healthy relationship with a long-term relationship, it'd be normal to share those things. You know what I mean? But what would also be normal is that you would be, and attractive, is that you would be a resilient person and have your handle on those things and those traumas. So for example, if I were to talk about with my LTR, long-term partner, right? Long-term relationship partner, if I were to talk to her about, you know, traumatic experience I had in childhood or something, I would be coming from a standpoint of resiliency, meaning like, here's a traumatic experience, but here's how I'm overcoming that. Here's how I overcame that. You see what I mean? That self-sufficiency is what's attractive. And if she's healthy, then she's not going to try to promote this idea that I'm not okay, I'm not healthy, I'm not good handling that stuff on my own. I have to rely on her for emotional support and her as the source of emotional strength. You know what I mean? That these traumatic things that happened to me in the past, you know, they cause all these flaws in me, and I have to get those things out and rely on her for that emotional strength. And it sounds really attractive, right? But it's not, because see, a healthy woman is going to want you to take care of your problems on your own and not bring your problems into the relationship. What she's essentially saying is, I want you to bring your problems into the relationship and hand them off to me. I will be your source of comfort and solution to all your problems. Man, that sounds really attractive. And to any guy who's had any kind of traumatic experience in the past, which is probably everybody, that sounds like a good deal. But here's where it falls apart. She is borderline personality disorder, so she's not emotionally stable. She's emotionally erratic, right? She's got psychological problems. She has a need for control over this extreme fear of abandonment. And so she's getting you to open up and to be reliant on her emotionally, to be vulnerable and reliant on her, because then that means you're not going to go anywhere and you'll see her as the one. So that means that you won't abandon her. So that's all fun and good, I guess. Well, not really, that's dysfunctional, but that's not where the problems really start. So the other part of it, the part of the problem is she's still a woman, okay? And so women in their hindbrain are not aroused or attracted by vulnerable men. And so when you show all these vulnerabilities and you let her handle it and she becomes your emotional source, then her hindbrain or instinctual brain becomes unaroused and unattracted to you. And so that lack of arousal and that lack of attraction towards you will cause her distress now. Remember, she's emotionally unstable, so now she created a situation, or at least promoted a situation, where she would be your emotional source. Now that she's your emotional source, she doesn't like it, and she's unattracted to you. And so then she proceeds to devalue you, and shit test you, and hammer you to try to get you to be strong again. And then let's say you become strong, you know, you stop relying on her as an emotional source, you start to show your strength again, then she wants to break you back down again so you don't leave her. You see this dysfunctional toxic cycle. Don't leave me, be reliant on me as an emotional source. Uh-oh, I'm your emotional strength now, and that's unattractive to me, so now I'm going to browbeat you for that, emotionally abuse you for that, withdraw my emotional attention. Now that I'm your emotional source, I'm going to withdraw that source and, you know, and essentially devalue you and break you down. And so that promotes or propagates that devaluation cycle in a BPD relationship. And so it just kind of keeps going. And it depends on how long you're stuck in there, but in how how much of this push-pull you do, you know, where you make yourself vulnerable, she shits all over it, then you're, okay, I'm not going to make myself vulnerable again, then she opens up and says, hey, baby, be vulnerable to me again, and it's okay, and, you know, I'm here for you, I'm the only one for you, and then you go, oh, okay, I can let my guard down again, and then she shits all over it again, and it just kind of keeps cycling downward because it's a devaluation process where she becomes, you know, she propagates her own worst fears, which is the end of the relationship. She promotes the end of the relationship, causes the demise of the relationship by devaluing you and seeing, you know, making sure that you continue to become lower and lower in her eyes until she thinks that you're such trash that she now has to vindictively harm you, not just abandon you and leave you and discard you, part of that discarding stage, but to harm you in the process because she's mad at you for not being the image that she thought you were. Of course, you're still the same person, but she has just devalued you through this process. She's made you appear in her own eyes as lower and lower and lower each time she propagates this cycle. And so you can't get out of this cycle by being in that relationship. That's the thing. She will force that because one of two things will happen. You'll either say, no, I'm not going to be vulnerable and be reliant on you as an emotional source, in which case she'll destroy the relationship anyway because she'll continue to get anxiety. Her anxiety will amp up and get greater and greater anxiety, greater and greater fears of that abandonment, and then she'll eventually cheat on you, leave you, or abandon the relationship anyways because you weren't there for her. You weren't, you know what I mean? It'll be your fault because you were going to leave her anyways and you're abandoning her emotionally and you're not this, that, and the other. You see what I'm saying? And she'll create fights and toxicity and all kinds of problems until it's over. So either you won't give yourself to her in that sense and be vulnerable to her, you know, and allow her to be your emotional source, in which case her anxiety will amp up so much that she'll destroy it one way or the other. Or you will give that to her, in which case she'll be unattracted, unaroused, which will then cause her distress and will then cause her to beat you up and devalue you and then cause a cycle of devaluation until it's over with. You see how any which way you go with the BPD woman is destruction. So the only way out of it is to not be in it, okay? There is no alpha tricks. There is no game tricks, relationship game tricks, dread. Any of these things that, you know, are being taught and promoted do not work against a cluster B person, all right? Or even not cluster B, but someone who's just highly toxic with abandonment issues and some of these things, attachment disorders. It just won't work, okay? You have to exit that relationship. And if that person can't be healthy, you know, then you can't be in a relationship with them. That is just how it is. And what you need to do is you need to remove this fantasy that a woman is supposed to be your source of emotional support. She is not your source of emotional support. A woman can be emotionally supportive, okay? But your problems are your problems to solve. Your trauma, your bad experiences, your problems, okay, whether they're your fault or not your fault, doesn't matter. They're for you to handle. What she can do is provide support to you to make it better, easier for you to handle your own stuff. But she cannot handle those things for you. Nobody can. And so do not buy into the toxic woman BPD myth that she is there to handle your problems for you, that she is there to be an emotional source for you. She is not. And anyone who approaches that, you are destined to have problems in that relationship. Guaranteed. It is going to blow up in your face if you're reliant on her for that emotional strength. You understand? You bring that strength to the relationship as a man. Any woman who is telling you differently, that is a red flag. Potentially, she may potentially have some of these problems, and she's trying to make you, in an unhealthy way, emotionally reliant, you know, so that you know, she can propagate her own destruction, right? The destruction of this relationship and the destruction of you in the process, who you are as a man, your self-concept, your sense of value, all those things, right? That are even more important than some relationship is who you are, all right? So don't let some woman destroy you. Don't let a toxic person destroy who you are in the process of, you know, cluster B abuse cycles in a relationship. All right. And so that ties in again with the vulnerability video I did. And so now hopefully you can see how this vulnerability thing is a trap, okay, that you can get into with these toxic people. Thanks again for the support and tuning in. And till next time.